This is Steven Winsenberg, and one of my favorite guys in the whole world is with us. His name is Chris Kreske, and Chris is the editorial director for MTV. That means you're kind of the head writer, isn't that right, Chris?
Yeah, it's just a fancier way of saying head writer. It gets me an extra week of vacation.
Yeah, and we need to talk about the last two books that you've done, and those are William Shatner's autobiographies, basically, Star Trek Memories and Movie Memories. And you actually wrote the bulk of these books, isn't that right?
Well, we do it together. He gets more involved, actually, than most times when you see an autobiography of somebody that it says with somebody else,
right,
that somebody else did the whole thing. Shatner actually got pretty well involved. In fact, he was at least there for most of the interviews. A lot of them he did himself. But one of the things we talked about very early on was that, these people, the Leonard Nimoys of the world and the Forrest Kellys and all these guys, and the guys that made the movies and wrote the movies, would sort of be a lot more open with him than they would be just talking to me over the phone. Or,
right.
If I was to corner him, I'd get the same 5 stories that they tell everybody. So, I mean, he sat down and we sat down, and we have just thousands and thousands and thousands of transcribed pages from must be 30 different people now that we've spoken to between the two books. And it really makes a big difference having him in the room. And then when it comes time to write it, we generally what I generally do is I'll go out, force him to cancel everything for 2 days,
mm-hmm.
and we'll sort of make a very rough outline of the book. What goes where, who says what where, what's too awful to put in the book, what's not too awful to put in the book.
Now, from hearing about his ego, I assume that he has final say on everything.
He has final say, but you know what's funny? It's I had heard about the ego forever, and the first time I met him, from the first time I met him, I have never really had a problem with him in terms of that. I expected him to be kind of this big, old school, Hollywood pompous kind of guy, and I actually met him. I was at the beach, and I got a call 9 o'clock in the morning one morning, asking if I could come have lunch with him because he had to come into New York at the last minute. And so I had shorts and a Hawaiian shirt to pick from, and flip-flops on. I'm like, I gotta come dressed like this. I have nothing else. So they're like, okay, come on. So I drive up. It's pouring rain. I end up being 45 minutes late. So I'm horrified. I'm I'm dressed like an idiot, and I'm 45 minutes late, and I'm expecting the worst. And I come in. He's at Planet Hollywood doing something, handing over some special effect thing to the restaurant. So I come in and. I come running back. They have these little glass tiled rooms where they put familiar people so they're not bothered while they're eating. And he's in one of those, and I go and the door guy lets me in, and I come running in. I'm soaking wet, and I'm dressed like a clown. And he's like, nice to meet you, hi. And I sit down, and we're just starting to talk, and food starts coming in, and I'm like, oh geez, I'm so late that they ordered already without me. And Shatner goes, no, wait, that's not our food. We didn't even order yet. And there's 3 waitresses, and they all sort of get together, and it takes them a second, and they go, oh, we brought you the wrong. This is actually for the next. I can't tell you whose food it is. It's for a very famous Hollywood producer who was in the next booth, and everyone in Hollywood hates. And they leave the food. They say, we'll be back in 1 second. We're just gonna we'll put it all back together. We'll take it over. They leave to go do that. At which point Shatner immediately comes up with the idea that we should lick our fingers and touch this guy's food before he gets it. And immediately I felt so much better about the guy,
So he was like a little kid almost.
Right, and he's giggling. We're sitting there licking our fingers. And he's hee hee.
But that's the opposite of everything I've heard about
that's
the guy.
Exactly what I was thinking.
Everybody says he is about the biggest. I'm sorry to say this, but the biggest jerk in Hollywood.
Yep, that's what I mean. And you hear the horror stories, and I never worked with him on a movie set. Actually, I've been with him on movie sets, and he was fine there too. But I've never had any problem with him. I liked him so much more than I expected to. I couldn't believe. And then you'd go to his house, and he'll show up in these ratty old sweats with bare feet. And there's 6 dogs laying around the house. It's not anything like what I expected. He's just
one of the things I liked about what you did in the books is you, and I assume this is you. You helped him kind of make fun of himself in the books. Yeah.
See, because he's sort of his perspective on all this stuff is from the complete opposite side of everybody else. So there are things that are just funny, that he knows of and he's heard of, and if you point them out to him, he'll have a good laugh at them. You can show him where he's overacted, or you can show him the blooper reels, and he'll sit there and laugh at him. So it's like he was fine with it. It sort of was instigated by me, and then he really kind of liked the idea of sort of deflating some of his own balloons.
And what kind of reaction did fans have to that? Did they go for that?
Most people really liked it. Yeah, I think Star Trek fans are so used to the carefully groomed sort of public relations approved sort of version of everything that just to have this sort of candid, sort of casual conversational tone was something they really appreciated. It was really the first time anyone had been less than reverential toward the show. It was always the greatest show of all time, and everybody was a genius, and every show was brilliant, and we were sort of the first people that sort of said, no, like a third of them are just really stupid.
But many of the people involved in the show have heavily criticized Shatner's books. And I got this out of Time magazine. He was on the cover of Time in November.
Yep.
And Gene Roddenberry's wife.
Majel.
Here's what she says. The only thing that surprises me about Bill Shatner's first book is that he managed to get it in the nonfiction category.
Right.
She says he took too much credit for a lot of things that happened at Star Trek. But Shatner, and really in the book, when I read it, it does sound like he's taking some credit for some of the creative decisions that were made, and some of the people involved are saying, no, he really didn't have that much.
Well, Majel, first of all, it's a great soundbite, but I actually checked it out. Majel hasn't read either one of the books. I verifiably hasn't read either one of the books. So it's a great soundbite, but, it would be nice if she did her homework before she talked. He does take credit for stuff. And from my perspective, I don't know if it's all true. It's funny because a couple of times things he took credit for, other people also took credit for, and we sort of we took pains to sort of say that, Leonard too says that this was his idea.
Right.
Both he and Leonard actually had creative, what's that word? They had nothing could happen unless they approved it.
Oh, yeah.
They had line approval or script approval. So a lot of times when something wasn't great, they would sort of be the catalyst towards getting it towards what they wanted.
Oh, and you have some great stories in the book of how they, threw fits and
that's the kind of stuff. That's the kind of stuff that having Shatner in the room gets.
Yeah, tell us about the interracial kiss. I think is one of my favorite stories.
Oh yeah, well that was originally was written for Uhura and Kirk, and then it was softened by somebody we don't know who, probably Roddenberry. We're not sure, to be Uhura and Spock, with this sort of twisted logic that since Spock was an alien, it wasn't quite as bad.
Yeah.
Of course, it's the same actor, and then Shatner fought for it and fought to get it back to Kirk. They went to shoot it, and apparently while they were shooting it, there was like 3 or 4 guys in suits were there, and at one point they cut. I mean, they had a great time doing it apparently, and at one point they broke and tried to change the whole thing at the last minute. The network and the studio were very nervous about it.
They actually shot 2 versions of it.
They shot 2 versions, and I keep checking back. Nichelle Nichols, even in her book, keeps swearing that the actual kiss is on the air. And you can look at the tape a million times. Their lips never actually make contact.
Right.
They shot it both ways, with the kiss and where their lips actually never meet. And to be honest with you, on the air they don't actually meet. So it's sort of a myth that the
but
show
they're still
contains
saying
the first interracial kiss.
They shot the first interracial kiss.
Yeah, they shot it. Somewhere there exists a piece of footage.
Now, you mentioned Nichelle Nichols' book, and boy, I've heard interviews with her where she just slams Shatner all over the place for his book.
It's a strange thing. I don't know exactly what to believe and what not to believe. The one thing that has become absolutely clear is that she and George Takei, who also had a book out, and Jimmy Doohan, who are sort of the most vocal Shatner critics, sort of do a lot of they sort of puff up their own role on the show as much as they can, and for somehow they've come to the conclusion that Shatner's behind the fact that they were never featured more in the show, which I can't absolutely say didn't happen. I can't imagine it did though. For the most part, these are people who showed up one day a week, said 4 or 5 lines, and went home till next week.
Well, this isn't a happy cast. As you read these Star Trek memories,
and the three names that I just said are sort of the most unhappy. Which
is so amazing because of any show in modern history, this is the group that continues to reunite.
Yeah. Well, for example, on the 7th movie, Nichelle is absolutely convinced that the reason she's not in the seventh Generations, she's not in this movie, is because Shatner didn't want her in it, which is like has so little to do with reality that it's laughable.
Yeah.
But still, that's what they think.
There are going to be some people listening today who say, I don't care about Star Trek. And to be honest with you, I don't think I've ever seen more than one episode of Star Trek.
Yeah, you know what? When we signed the contract to do this book, I guess I can say this now, I had never seen an episode. I faked my way through it so well. I was like, yeah, Klingons and, they were bad, yeah.
Maybe that's why I enjoyed the book. I loved the books.
Yeah, well then, you know what I did? I started watching 5 a day for months at a time. 2 in the morning before work and 3 when I got home. There's only 79 of them.
So what's the big deal? Why in the world has this thing lived for 30 years?
I think it's the characters. Shatner tends to put it up there with this whole fairy tale sort of structure, but I think it's really the characters, and they're all such... my wife's a psychologist, and she tends to think that it's sort of every character on the show is so needy. They're all these super competent people, but somewhere you scratch the surface, and they've got to be these thoroughly unhappy people. And so there's just something about there's something very compelling about the characters, and there's certainly the chemistry between Kirk and Spock and Bones sort of rose to.
Well, and the whole cast on the screen, they looked like a family, even though off the screen it was the opposite.
Yeah, right.
And an intellectual.
It was pretty much
family.
like that from day one too, which is surprising. Which surprised me anyway.
Talking with Chris Kreske, the co-author of William Shatner's Star Trek Memories and Star Trek Movie Memories. And when we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about Captain Kirk, who was actually born in Iowa. You remember that, Chris?
Yep, Riverside, Iowa.
Yep, March 22nd, 2233.
Wow, well, you're a Trek nerd too, eh?
No, I'm not.
you don't have plastic ears on now, do you?
These headphones kind of look like it. But there are rumors that Patrick Stewart of The Next Generation and Bill Shatner had some animosity between them.
Yeah, that's completely false. I was actually there when they shot all their scenes together in June. Which was really weird because they would break because I was basically there to interview Patrick for this book. It was last minute stuff that we were trying to squeeze in. We wrote the whole book. They were starting to typeset it and get the printing press ready while we were still doing the last 40 pages.
Yeah.
So I went out in June and they would break and we would go to lunch and I would sit there at this table with Shatner and Patrick Stewart, both in their captain's uniforms, and it was just this completely surreal thing.
And people would pay.
But in fact, the opposite is true. They really like each other.
Do these guys see this as being a big money-making machine for themselves, too? I mean, at some point, beyond just being a character that they play, they actually see this as being a way they can milk it.
Yeah, they've both sort of, they've taken advantage of the...
Well, the feeling I've gotten from Shatner, just in seeing him and things, is if he wasn't getting paid the big bucks, he wouldn't be doing this. I mean, he doesn't care that much about it.
Yes, well... He's certainly out to get as much as he can for doing it, but in fact, he held out on this last movie, especially once he knew what the storyline was going to be, and got a big sum of money for a little amount of time on camera. But especially, and at least in Shatner's case, I don't know Patrick Stewart well enough, although I would think it'd be the same for him too. They sort of seem to they certainly wouldn't accept a script or a storyline that they didn't think was at least okay.
Did Bill Shatner really at some point tell Star Trek followers to get a life?
No. That was just on the Saturday Night Live episode that he hosted about 5 years ago, which is just it's the funniest scene they've done in the last 10 years.
But that's really what we remember him saying. I mean,
right. It's what
to me,
everybody remembers. And if you've ever gone to a convention, somebody certainly should stand up there at the podium and yell that.
Yeah. And wasn't that one of the ideas for one of the titles of the book, too, at some point?
We originally wanted to call it Get a Life, but, the first book, we wanted to call it Get a Life, and the publisher wouldn't.
Roddenberry, in the books, I'd say gets credit, but at some point, his role diminished.
Sure. And depending on who you talk to, how much the role diminished and how quickly it diminished, varies a lot. But, like I said, we've probably talked to 30, 40 people now at length, and it seems that certainly the idea was his. Certainly the first 13 episodes, first whole season, really. First 13 episodes were written pretty much by him or extensively rewritten by him. Whole rest of the first season was pretty much coming from his ideas. And as of season 2, he took one step back, and Gene Kuhn sort of took over the reins, and changes, because of that, certain changes came up. The shows got funnier. this guy had this anecdote about how he came into Gene's office, and he was talking to Gene, and Gene kind of looked nervous, and he was kind of white and sweating, and didn't seem to be paying much attention to what he was saying. And all of a sudden, in the middle of the conversation, he hears giggling from behind the curtain, at which point Nichelle Nichols, just in Gene's sweater, comes out from behind the curtain. Mm-hmm. And he's like, "Oh, wasn't that a funny practical joke?" And we're like, well, it's kind of a weird practical joke. And then, finally we can put two and two together, and the story changes a little bit. But yeah, there was certainly that.
Did you talk with Roddenberry's wife?
Yeah, we did on the first book. And her sort of version of events that have passed is sort of far, 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 far different than most everybody else's. So we didn't particularly talk much with her on the second one.
And she was
she
was an actress too, right? She was involved in some of the episodes.
Some of them, yeah. A minor character called Nurse Chapel. She's in about, I guess, 8, 10, 12 episodes.
Now, this was the worst kept secret in the world was that Captain Kirk dies in Star Trek Generations movie. And then, for some reason, apparently they had to go reshoot the ending.
Oh, I can tell you exactly what they reshot.
Good.
Well, I was there in June when they shot it the first time. As it was originally scripted, Captain Kirk comes in, has this big fight with the bad guy, Dr. Soren. At which point, Dr. Soren drops the thing that runs this thing that's going to let the Nexus blow up the world. Patrick Stewart runs over, picks it up, and goes and saves the world. And at just about the same time, Soren picks up his phaser and shoots Kirk in the back. Kirk dies, and they bury him. Mm-hmm. It was sort of wasn't that big a deal.
Right.
Apparently, Paramount held test screenings, and people liked the movie, didn't like the ending. They didn't like that Kirk died, but they just certainly didn't like at all the way he died. So they went back and sort of made Kirk's ending a little more heroic. Now there's he runs out on the bridge, and the bridge is falling, and he's got to save the thing and give himself up to save the world and 200 million people, primitive people on this planet that's about to explode.
Is he really dead?
I know.
Come on.
There are. He's probably dead. Realistically, he's probably dead because they probably don't want to pay him to be in another movie. However, there are a couple of escape valves that are sort of worked into the story.
Well, yeah, the way they work this, the time traveling and all that. I mean, he could be in any of the future movies too.
Yeah, there are a couple of fairly obvious ways that they could go back and get him. They're not really all that hidden. They purposely glance over them, so you don't really notice them too much. But if you stop and think about it, there's a couple of ways they could go back and get him.
Are they going to?
I think realistically, no, because he would cost too much. You know what I mean?
And does he has no desire to do any more?
I think he would love to. He was really. It was funny because about this time last year, I was out with him, and I was surprised by how cavalier he was about the character dying. He's like, they pay me check. It's a good story. Finally, he was working on the story at that point with them. And I liked the way the story's going, so it'll be okay. And then I was out in L.A. working on the MTV Movie Awards in June. I wasn't gonna go out and watch them shoot the scenes where he dies. And I got this phone call one night, and it's Shatner, and he's like, can you come out? This is really starting to weird me out. Finally at the last minute here, it's really starting to get to me, and I think we should probably, get some stuff on tape here while I'm here doing this. So I flew out. It was only like an hour. They were just outside of Las Vegas in the desert there. And at that point, it was like he had flip-flopped like 180 degrees. I think he had sort of talked himself into thinking he'd be okay about it, and then at the last minute, it really sort of backed up on him.
Was he a ladies' man?
Let's see.
From what
I got to
say.
consult the Magic 8 Ball. There's all signs point to yes. Although, that's the Magic 8 Ball talking.
Obviously there were stories, right?
There's a few, yeah. None that he thought were interesting enough to make public. Wait till the next commercial.
Yeah. Well, and my question is, when he dies, are these things going to come out now?
I don't know. It's funny because I think
they had a lot of good female actresses on that original series. I mean, Joan Collins was on, all sorts of good actresses.
Yeah, well, and all sorts of scantily clad actresses.
Right.
But I don't know. I'm not sure, to be honest with you. He's he's sort of a very private person on that. His personal life is very private. It's like pulling teeth to get him to talk. Finally, in the second book, I got him to open up a little more than I did in the first one.
Well, let's talk then, since we don't want to answer that question. Let's talk about the unmentionable. The other night on CNN, they had a tape of William Shatner being interviewed by a radio station in Tampa, Florida, and the DJ at the Tampa station asked him point blank, does he wear a hairpiece or a wig? And he point blank said no, and then he started ripping the guy to shreds verbally. I mean, it was incredible.
Yeah, I know. I've heard about it. I haven't heard the tape. Yeah, and I haven't spoken to him since it happened.
And I certainly don't want to have him rip you to shreds.
Oh, no. I don't know, to be honest with you. That's the one thing that I've never really brought up. I should, actually, because he's been okay about other stuff. He was fine about talking about, he freely admitted how Kirk would, get chubby during the series, and how he, perhaps he overacts a bit every once in a while, which we put in the book, too. That is the one area, though, that I think I was just a little too, nervous to bring up. The answer he usually gives when people ask him that question at a convention or whatever is people in this business do as much as they can to look as good as they can for as long as they can. So, I mean, I don't know if you want to use that as a real answer or not.
But that's the one thing you still haven't talked about.
That's the one thing I don't know for sure.
Yeah. Speaking of what he looks like, when he was on Letterman the other night, he didn't look too good.
Well, it's funny, too, though, because he was in great shape right throughout the shooting of this movie and through when it came out. I saw him, I guess, end of November. He was in town for a few days, and I hung around with him for a while. And he was in really good shape still. We were talking before we went on. That started when he was talking about on Letterman the other night about this horse falling on him at a horse show, and that's what started it. He was apparently not in great shape then. This horse reared up and fell on him and tore all the muscles in his one leg. Somebody drove up on a golf cart and scared the horse. It reared up and fell on him. And he ended up having to do all this physical therapy stuff to get the leg working again. And at the end of which, he was in pretty good shape because they really worked him fairly hard. And at almost exactly that time, he was signed to be in this new Star Trek Generations. So he figured, okay, I'll keep up the torture for another 6 months. So by the time, through May and June of '94, he was in great shape.
Yeah.
He looked, he was back to, Star Trek 2 level shape,
But it fluctuates.
Yeah.
Let's go to the phone lines for Chris Kreske, the co-author of William Shatner's Star Trek movie memories. And Dwayne, you have some questions. Go ahead.
Yes, good morning.
Hi.
My first question is, I remember a couple of episodes, I think, of the Twilight Zone that Bill Shatner starred in. One, I remember, had a devil's head on top of a jukebox.
It was a fortune teller kind of thing.
Yeah, and then he also did one that they redid in the movie.
Right, the Terror at 20,000 feet.
Yeah.
It's funny. Go ahead.
His range seemed to be very, very wide in those pieces, and I'm wondering if he felt that maybe his role as Captain Kirk might have shortchanged or maybe stymied somewhat his growth as an actor.
Yeah, that's a good question.
It's funny because I was talking to Steve a little bit about that during the commercial almost. He was, right before Star Trek, he was just starting to come into his own as an actor. He was starting to work a lot. He was on Broadway in something called The World of Susie Wong, which was apparently a hit, although I never heard of it. And he was actually in Judgment at Nuremberg, so he was getting real film roles and stuff. However, his bank account, because according to him, his bank account was still low, and with 3 kids, he was looking for a way to make a little, make some more money. And when Star Trek came along, when they offered it to him, he took it pretty much to try and get ahead monetarily. But who knows what would have happened, otherwise. He could have, gone on to bigger and better things. He could have, have done nothing,
Right.
The second point that I wanted to ask about, and I appreciate the time, is if memory serves me correct, he wasn't the original choice as Captain Kirk.
Nope. He was actually the 4th choice, I believe.
Okay. Do you think anyone else could have pulled it off?
Well, I've seen, if you ever see, there's a pilot that exists.
The Menagerie.
With Jeffrey Hunter.
Yeah.
It was kind of, I don't know. I thought it was kind of weird, kind of lame in comparison. They got rid of him basically because his wife was his agent, and she kept insisting on him owning a part of the show, and Roddenberry wouldn't give it up.
Now, who are the other guys that almost got the part?
It's funny because they're both recognizable. Second was Lloyd Bridges, who said no. And third was Jack Lord, who said yes if you give me 50% of everything that the series ever earned. And so they said no to him. At that point, they called Shatner.
Okay. I appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Sure.
Thanks for calling, Dwayne.
You bet.
I can't see Bookham.
I know.
And he's from Hawaii. Bookham Spock. Well, you do a great job writing as well. The book is called Star Trek Movie Memories, co-written by Chris Kreske. Thanks for being with us.